Welcome to the IRS Debt and Audit Podcast with Brian Loughrin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the IRS Debt and Audit Podcast with Brian Loughrin. Brian's a seasoned tax attorney based in Tampa and the founder of TampaTaxRelief. For more than 25 years, he's helped individuals and business owners across the country resolve serious IRS problems, from audits to tax debt to cases in the U.S. tax court. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Brian and I are talking about IRS bank levies, how accounts get frozen, and what it takes to get access restored. How to get your hands back on your money, Brian. How are you?
Good, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing great. Why don't we just start with the basic, like, what does it actually mean when somebody suddenly loses access, to their money because of the IRS?
Well, even with people understanding, and some people get a bank levy and they legitimately aren't aware of an IRS debt, and it happens. But even for people that are aware that they have a tax debt and that they quote unquote could be subject to a bank levy because they've received notices and so forth, it's still quite a shock. And it's usually somebody in the morning. A lot of people log onto their computer in the bank account, just check balances and so forth. And for some reason, these bank levies always seem to hit on payday for some reason. Banks have a little something to do with that, but neither here nor there. It's a shock to them. And of course, they pick up the phone, they call, and they say, "Hey, I just logged onto my bank account and it's 0.00 with a pending $100 bank fee."
Yeah.
And what's going on? And of course, from there, we just start conversation.
Well, what usually has to happen before a case even reaches that point? Like, were there notices sent that no one paid attention to, or what happens?
Well, yeah, there's lots of notices sent. I mean, many, many notices, but in some cases, people have moved. And if the address the IRS has is an incorrect address, they're not generally going to get these notices. The IRS, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, the IRS doesn't work off a post office change of address card. They have either the address on the last filed tax return, or it is a separate form that you have to fill out, a form 8822, and you have to paper mail it to the IRS. So for a lot of people in the computer age, they think changing it at the post office does it and so forth, and it doesn't. But again, it's a situation where the notices are sent. That they don't issue a bank levy as the first step. There's no way they ever do that.
Yeah, of course. So, okay, so now, once the IRS issues a levy, how does that process play out between the IRS and the bank?
Well, the bank receives a notification, and sometimes it's mailed, possibly fax, but I think generally it's mailed to these banks. And of course, all banks are federally chartered, which means if the banks don't follow what the IRS is directing them to do, then they could lose their bank charter, which means they're out of business. So I don't think there's ever been a bank in the history of the world, nor will there ever be a bank in the history of the world that will ever ignore an IRS bank levy notice. And so the bank receives the notice, and a lot of times my clients will say, "Well, the bank didn't call me and tell me it was going to happen." And I said, "Well, I mean, the police don't call it a dope house and say, 'Hey, we're going to raid you at 3 a.m. I mean, they just don't do that. They go ahead and just do what they do. So no, the bank isn't under any obligation to notify them. But basically, the bank will seize the funds that are in the account, obviously up to the amount on the levy notice. So obviously, if the levy notice is for $98,000 and you have 116,000, they're only going to seize the 98,000.
Okay. And is there a window of time where something can still be done before the money is sort of sent to the IRS?
There's a 21-day provision whereby the bank has to hold the funds for 21 days prior to releasing to the IRS. And so it's within that time frame. Hopefully people are notified. And again, most people nowadays check their bank balance online, right? Or an app. I mean, the days of waiting for a bank statement to get mailed or getting in the car and driving to the bank to check it, it's ridiculous. Nobody does that anymore. And so people find out right away. And of course, there's that time frame. And as I say, it seems miraculously that these bank levies always hit on payday, always. And always right around the end of the month as well. For everybody has, so many people have bills that are due on the first of the month.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual at all for it to come in like that.
Yeah, no, as we sit here, we're coming up on a Friday, mid-month. Anything could happen there. I'm curious. So so tomorrow morning I log into my bank account to check my balances, and I see that, there's a $5,000 levy that's been pulled. Now obviously I'm aware. Now I have 21 days to do something to deal with that.
Yeah, exactly. And you obviously don't want to wait 21 days. Most
Right.
people, quite frankly, if they're that far behind on taxes, is at least for the people we represent, they have legitimate financial troubles. They've had
Oh, yeah.
business issues, health issues, and things like that. But some people do get their bank levy and they know they owe the IRS, and they say, well, they're going to come get the money anyway. I don't care, and so on and so forth. But again, for the people that contact us, you have 21 days, but you certainly don't want to wait 21 days.
Of course.
You want to respond to it quickly.
And how does the IRS decide whether a levy should stay in place or be released? Is that where you come in terms of having that conversation?
Exactly. And one big mistake people make, or they're of a mistaken belief, is when they reach out to us, they'll say, the IRS froze my bank account. Or I said, well, actually, they didn't freeze your bank account. Okay. They locked down whatever was in there, how much was in there, blah, blah, blah. How much does the IRS say you owe, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, I can't use my account, and that's going to be a problem because I'm getting another paycheck next week, and I have direct debits, which so many people do. And I say, no,
Right.
it's not frozen. It's kind of whatever was in the account that day up to the amount owed is the amount that the bank will hold. And again, for 21 days,
Hmm.
or if it's not released sooner. But after that day, the next day, you're at liberty to use your bank account in the same way, form, or fashion that you had before, which then lends a question. Well, how do I know the IRS isn't going to issue another bank levy the next day and the next day and the next day? And I say, well, I've been doing this a long time. I can only recall one case that we were, and I don't even know if we were involved in it, but in one case that I'm aware of where the IRS did issue a bank levy day after day after day. And that was somebody that had really angered the IRS over a number of years. We'll just leave it like that. And they were involved in some shady stuff and things like that. But I mean, in the hundreds of
Not
times
typical.
I've seen bank levies, I've never seen it where the IRS issues it day after day after day. So of course there's a risk, but it is a mistake people think. They think the account is frozen. I got to go open a new bank account. I got to change all my direct debits. I said, well, not really, you don't.
Yeah.
And so that's one
That's
thing
good
that
to
I always
know.
like to tell people.
But a quick question about that too. Let's say I owe the IRS 10 grand and I've got 8 grand in my bank account and they grab that, but then I get a direct deposit 3 days later for 5 grand for my paycheck. Does Because I haven't met my obligation to the IRS yet, does the bank automatically rake the additional amount or is it
The bank levy, here's a good analogy. I always describe a bank levy versus a wage garnishment.
ah,
And we talked about that, but a wage garnishment essentially attaches to your earnings continuously until released. Okay. A bank levy is a one and done. It's kind of like
got it.
comparing a wrestling match to a boxing match. A wrestling match, they grab up on each other and hold each other and don't let go till it's over. And a boxing match is, just a punch here, a punch there,
Yeah.
and so forth. And so it's kind of a one and done deal. And again, they can issue it, maybe not the next day. They can issue it a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, whatever they may decide to do. But generally speaking, if it's coming as an automated bank levy from ACS, Automated Collection System,
Yeah.
it's just kind of a one and done deal at that
Okay.
point.
I get you. So, how about can you walk us through a situation where, a client found out their account was frozen and how things unfolded from there, kind of a real world scenario?
Yeah, well, people will call up and they'll say, is this stamp tax or so on? Yes, this is okay. Well, I just logged into my bank account. It's 0.0 with a pending $100 bank fee
Yeah.
coming along as a service charge. And what do I do? What do I do? And I'll say, well, are you certain that this is from the? Well, I don't know who it's from, or I thought my IRS debt was paid, or my ex-husband's, whatever. And maybe a lot of times people know, but sometimes they don't. And as I mentioned a minute ago, oftentimes for our clients, tax debt goes hand in hand with other financial issues. They
Yeah.
maybe have some health problems, or they've experienced a tremendous business loss, or something like that. And so the first thing I ask people is, I say, do you have a copy of the bank levy notice that the bank is relying upon? And of course, most of the time they'll say, well, I don't have it. I said, okay, do this. You reach back to your bank, call them up. You may need to drive to a branch, go in there and say, please print out or email me a copy of the levy notice received from the IRS.
Ah, got it.
And they'll say, okay, and they do it. But I've had situations where we're working a case with a client, and they call up, and we've had the case for a period of time, and they call up all bent out of shape saying, well, they issued IRS levied my bank account. You told me this and you told me that. I said, listen, get a copy of that notice. Well, I should get a copy. Say, get a copy of the notice. They send it in, and it turns out maybe it's not an IRS bank levy, but maybe a student loan, federal government student loan, or it could be child support. I've seen that happen where child support issues ultimately issues a bank levy. So it's really important. I tell people to, when you see a levy like that in your bank account, the first thing you want to do is reach out to the bank and have them provide a copy of the levy notice. And it's only
Okay.
a couple of pages in length. It's not the size of a phone book. So it's not this onerous request that you're asking the bank to
Right.
do, nor is it something they need to get out of storage or talk to the legal department on. And I tell people, listen, before you call them or email them, what have you, be prepared because you may get some pushback from the front end person, a person taking your call, or maybe the teller at your local branch. If you drive over there in the next hour, might say, "Yeah, we can't provide that to you. That's not something you can have." And I say, you tell them you absolutely can provide it to me, and it's something that you have to have. So sometimes you got to kind of push a little bit
Yeah.
to get it. But I like to take a look at that because not only is it going to determine whether or not it's from the IRS, but it's also going to have very important information on there, such as the amount that the IRS is saying is owed. It's going to have the tax periods, the tax forms, etc. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of very important information on there, besides the fact at the top of the letter it says IRS or possibly child support or what have you.
Right. Right. Okay, cool. So, real quick then, once a levy does hit the bank, how quickly can things escalate from there? Like, where's the ceiling on this thing, and how fast does that happen?
Well, I tell people a bank levy is kind of the end of the road. It's much like a wage garnishment. If you W-2 wage earner and you get a wage garnishment, you're looking at about 90% of your take-home pay being garnished. If you get a bank levy, again, we know, as I said, they will take the amount up to the amount the IRS says is owed. And for most people, it's usually everything that's in the bank account that day. And so it's at the end of the road. It's like a heart attack. So does that mean it's fatal? You can't recover it? No, it doesn't. Because again, with that bank levy notice, it's going to tell me where it was issued from. Is it issued from what I call the national level, which is, ACS or Ogden, Utah, Fresno, California,
Hmm.
Austin, Texas, Holtzville, New York, wherever it may be, or is it issued from a local IRS office? So you have scores of IRS offices around the country. And if it's a local IRS office, there's going to be a name and a contact person and a phone number and so on. If it's at the national level, there's still a contact uh,
Number. Yeah.
number on there per se, not necessarily a name. It will be a name, but it's computer generated person
Yeah.
in charge of all the levies nationwide. And it gives me a starting point to reach out. And the first thing we want to do is obviously we want to determine the accuracy of it as best we can based upon what a client will tell us. But
Hmm.
also we want to contact the IRS and say, hey, we're in receipt of this and we need to talk about it and start the process and do everything we can to get that bank levy released.
Hmm. Yeah, I imagine too. It's like you get that information, it tells you what tax years and what forms and what have you, and then you're able to, with the client, go, okay, did you file these taxes? Did you, because there may be a discrepancy in the records, and you can
It
get
does
that
happen.
cleared.
They'll say, "Well, I paid that off, a month ago," or I thought it was paid a year ago," and I find out that the payment they sent in was, say, mistakenly applied to maybe the current year they're in rather than an old year. And in
Right.
that case, those the funds are there; they just were misapplied.
Yeah.
And one of the values of contacting the bank, as far as our client contacting the bank, is the fact that they can get a fax number for that bank. Now, again, you have huge banks like Bank of America and Wells Fargo. I mean, these are zillion-dollar size banks, the biggest in the country. They have whole dedicated departments just for bank, as you might imagine. I mean, Bank of America probably has upwards of, who knows, maybe 50, 80 million accounts. So they'll have a department that handles that. And the reason why, in addition to confirming that it's from the IRS, that I tell our clients is when you contact the bank, secure a fax number for that department. Or if it's a really small bank, sometimes clients bank at a small kind of a mom and pop, savings and loan, a credit
Mhm.
union. Maybe you get an actual individual's name, but get a fax number. And the reason why that's of value is because if we're successful in getting the bank levy released, the way the IRS would do it is they would paper mail a letter to the bank.
Yeah.
Now, you can just imagine how long that's going to take just to get it put together, how long it's going to take to get to the bank. And I mean, you
Yeah.
could be talking, a week or 2 weeks. And in some cases, if you're pushing up against the 21 days, they may not receive it before that 21 days is up, at which point they'll send the money to the IRS. Then you're chasing it that way.
Got
So
it.
get a fax number. And people say, well, I've got an email. It's Betty Smith, and here's her email. I said, I don't need an email. The IRS, they're not going to email a release. They use a
Right.
fax machine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just stunned when they hear that. Well,
I know.
guess what? People say this isn't your father's Oldsmobile. Well, it's your grandfather's IRS, and as
Yeah.
far as a lot of technology. So get a fax number, and that's going to really assist us. And again, if it's small, get us maybe a contact name.
Sure.
But for the larger banks, the international, globalist style banks, they have a whole division just for
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I was going to say, as you're talking about this bank, I mean, individuals, this hits your mailbox and you're like, oh my God, what's this? But banks deal with this all the time. It's like a normal
Exactly.
part of their business.
And,
So,
and again, not just IRS, they have a levy department. So again, child support, student loans, military, people get on the military, they owe the military, whatever,
yeah.
anything that has to do with a bank. And then, of course, you have a whole division of levies that are related to just private civil litigation, business dispute, or somebody suing another person on a personal debt or something,
Yeah.
getting a judgment and then getting it issued that way. So again, you can find a contact place for it if you can get a fax number. That's absolutely critical.
Super good, super actionable. Brian, we're against time, but as always, great talking to you. Thanks for sharing your expertise and point of view.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of the IRS Debt and Audit Podcast. If you want to learn more about Brian Loughrin and his work helping individuals and business owners resolve serious IRS problems, visit the website TampaTaxRelief.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, subscribe, share the show with someone in your world who would benefit from this information, or maybe even leave a review so people can find clear guidance when dealing with the IRS. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.